Good morning and welcome to Live from FM 91, conversation and performance with some of the area's finest musicians and visiting guest artists. I'm your host, Brad Cresswell. Now, normally we would have a guest artist right here in the studio with us, but of course the pandemic is going on, and we are, like so many other folks in the business, doing this virtually. So I am joined right now by the cellist, Anita Graef, who is up near Chicago, actually, talking to me now. Welcome, Anita.
Hi, Brad. Thank you so much for having me on the program.
Well, it's great to have you, if even through virtual means, because you not only are a native of Evanston, near Chicago, but you also have connections here in our area in Ohio as well as in Michigan. Why don't you give us a little bit of a background on yourself and your connections to our community?
Sure. Well, I grew up in Chicago, in Evanston specifically, and I've grown up around music my whole life. Pretty much every single person in my family is a musician. And I ended up moving to Ann Arbor, Michigan to study at University of Michigan for my undergraduate degree. So I was there for about 4 years and just had a great time. Ann Arbor's great. All of Southeast Michigan is wonderful. The Detroit area, I just have really fond memories of that time. And after I graduated there, I moved to Cincinnati, Ohio for a fellowship with the Cincinnati Symphony. So I have been playing with them for a few years, and I also got my master's degree there at Cincinnati Conservatory.
That's great. So definitely possible that some of the folks listening to our broadcast may even know you or at least be familiar with your work.
It's definitely possible.
Yeah. You've brought in a couple of pieces for us today, and the centerpiece of what we're going to hear is one of the Johann Sebastian Bach cello suites, these solo cello suites. Everybody knows that first movement from the first cello suite. If I played it now, everybody would be like, oh, yeah, I've heard that before. But there are 6 of them altogether. You brought in the third one. I wonder if you can tell us about the suites in general and about the one you're going to perform for us particularly.
Absolutely. Well, taken as a whole, the 6 suites are these kind of varied, imaginative works for solo cello that are kind of the pinnacle of what every cellist hopes they can perform. And I think the really wonderful thing about Bach's music is that it seems to grow with you as you grow. I notice the times in my life that I come back to a piece I've already played before of his, I find all these new things I hadn't seen before. I can take new approaches. It's really great how, as you travel through your life as a musician, the music travels with you.
Yeah. How long have you been playing this piece? Because I know you've been playing the cello for some time now.
Right. I've been playing the cello for probably upwards of 20 years, but I actually have fond memories of this piece in particular. I think my first time meeting this piece, I was about 5 years old. Because you see the penultimate set of movements in this particular suite, the third suite, they're known as bourrées, and they're often adapted for younger musicians, for beginning students to be able to play, especially in the Suzuki string method of teaching, which is how I got my start playing cello. So I have vivid memories of being 5 years old and working on this piece for the first time. But what amuses me is that it seems like as you advance as a musician, simple music becomes increasingly difficult to play, because I have very clear memories of leaving a lesson when I was probably 5 years old and thinking like, wow, I really, really nailed that piece. But 20 years later, here I am working on the same piece and agonizing over where should I place this note and how do I want to phrase this passage. And I'm sure 20 years from now, I'll have a completely different approach yet again.
I've heard a similar story from other cellists who talk about these suites in particular as sort of serving a function of being an exercise and introduction to solo cello when they were young. And then as they get older, it turns into the kind of the Mount Everest, for cellists of trying to bring their interpretation, discover things about it, and also grow as an artist when they perform this work.
Absolutely. You just keep finding new challenges and new methods of inspiration with these pieces.
Well, we're going to hear the 20-year-old version of your interpretation of the Suite Number 3. This is music of Johann Sebastian Bach. The Suite Number 3 in C major for solo cello, performed by our guest, cellist Anita Graef, here on Live from FM 91. The Suite for Solo Cello Number 3 in C Major, music of Johann Sebastian Bach, performed by our guest today for Live from FM 91. That is the cellist Anita Graef. Anita is actually in Evanston, Illinois, near Chicago, talking to me this morning. We are talking virtually. You are performing virtually for us, but the music itself is fantastic, and I want to thank you for taking the time to interact with us this morning and bring us this music, Anita. Let me ask you, given that we're doing this sort of thing virtually and so many musicians around the globe are forced by the pandemic to do something similar, how has it affected you? What are you doing right now as a musician to keep the music alive, as it were?
Sure. Well, I'm sure like almost everyone in the arts right now, there's been a lot of challenging adjustments to be made to our kind of current new musical landscape. But in a lot of ways, it's been rewarding as well. I play with a chamber group in Chicago called the Giuliani Ensemble, which was founded by my mother around 20 or so years ago. And many of the group members are also my family members, since both of my parents and my two brothers are all professional musicians as well. So we figured this year would be a great opportunity to move our concerts to an online format, since we were all quarantining together. So the series is called Second Fridays, and as the name suggests, we record and release a new concert each month on the second Friday to all of our subscribers. And I will say it's been challenging to adjust so quickly to our new musical reality, but it's also been enormously fun to collaborate with my family members, with whom I otherwise wouldn't have as much time to perform.
What other activities are you doing now? Are you shut up at home? I'm looking right now, shut in at home. I'm looking right now at a list of like your hobbies, the things you like to do, and a lot of them I can see still happening during the pandemic, like reading and cooking. And
yeah, it's been a good opportunity to cultivate other interests besides music. And I've definitely had a chance to spend more time, walking the dogs, reading new things, working on some of my language skills, those kinds of things. But it's also been really great to just have the opportunity to work on new music without specific deadlines. A lot of the things I've been doing are radio appearances like this one, since it is possible to do those without leaving home. And a lot of my other concerts have been moving to sort of live streaming formats, and obviously a lot of cancellations and postponements. And a couple of concerts are going ahead later this year with really strict safety measures and sort of really reduced audience sizes. So I'm curious to see how that turns out as well.
Well, we want to give people your website and make sure that they have the spelling of your name in case they go looking for you online. It's Anita, A-N-I-T-A. Your last name is spelled G-R-A-E-F, pronounced Graef. So your website is just anitagraef.com. Is that what it is?
Yeah, that's right. And it's pretty frequently updated with anything I've got going on.
Yeah, we'll link to that from our website as well. We have sort of the cherry on top in the form of music. You've got one more little piece that you're going to play for us. You want to tell us what that is?
Absolutely. So this is one of 11 caprices written by Giuseppe Dall'Abaco. And I actually didn't know much about this composer before now, but I wish I had, since he wrote so prolifically for the cello. Something like 35 sonatas, in addition to these 11 caprices, from which I'm playing just the first piece today. And so with, like I said, a lot of engagements have been canceled or postponed or moved to some kind of online format, I've gotten really interested in exploring repertoire for solo cello that I didn't already know, just because it seems like it'll behoove me this year to play in a reduced format or play in a way that I can call out to other people and still have interesting new repertoire. So it's been really fun to explore repertoire I didn't already know about for solo cello.
Well, let's hear it. This is the Caprice number 1 in C minor, music of Giuseppe Dall'Abaco, performed by our guest this morning, virtually I might add, cellist Anita Graef, here on Live from FM 91. the Caprice number 1 in C minor, that's music by Giuseppe Dall'Abico, performed by the cellist Anita Graef. Anita has been my guest this morning on Live from FM 91, which we have been conducting virtually, talking through our virtual connections and you performing for us from the comfort of your home there in Evanston, Anita. I want to point folks to your website again. It's Anita Graef, Graef spelled Graef.com. We can find out all about what you've been doing, what your plans are for the future. We talked a lot about what you're doing in the terms of offering things online and virtually in the face of the pandemic. And we certainly appreciate you coming in and sharing music with us today. And I'll give you one last opportunity to give a shout out to your friends at the University of Michigan and down in Cincinnati as well, if you want.
Yeah, I hope if anybody's listening, shoot me a message, say hi. Thank you so much for having me as a guest on the program today, Brad. I hope I can visit in person someday soon.
Well, we look forward to that. Again, cellist Anita Graef joining us here on Live from FM 91. You've been listening to Live from FM 91. I'm your host, Brad Cresswell, and thank you very much for joining us today here on your public radio station, FM 91.